Welcome to the second edition of the Fantasy Football Goon podcast. This time we are doing an NFC East breakdown. Joining me again is my colleague and close friend, John Santucci. Tooch, welcome again, Tooch.
Hey, Joe.
Let's talk a little bit about NFC East, shall we?
It's always good to be talking football with you.
Absolutely, brother. So let's talk a little bit about the Dallas Cowboys. Jason Garrett's in his sixth season as head coach.
Big D.
That's right, Big D. So let's just go from top to bottom. I mean, what do you think about Dak Prescott?
You know, I like this kid. I think he's going to take a step this year. Maybe not as your number one starter this year, although he could easily do well for you. You know, he had 6 rushing touchdowns. If you're in a standard league, you got to love that.
Definitely.
Didn't throw a lot of interceptions. I think he only threw 4 on the year, which is amazing considering he was a rookie.
Yeah, I don't expect that to repeat.
Right. He's got decent targets, and he has, one of the best running backs in the league to hand off to.
Yeah, that's a really nice segue. Let's talk a little bit about Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, had a great rookie season. Has potential shadow looming over him, though, with potentially being suspended for a few games.
Right, and that you see him kind of fluctuating between the 3rd and 4th pick, just because he doesn't catch the ball as much as the other guys, although finished the year with 363 receiving yards. So, but far and away, he was the leading rusher in the league with 1,631 yards. No one was close to him. The next guy was 320 yards behind him. Jordan Howard. He's the guy. I mean, I'd have if he was there, 3rd pick, I'm taking Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, I mean, he was an absolute stud, and just look at that offensive line he had. It's just fantastic. And it makes things a lot easier for him, that's for sure. Backup is still Alfred Morris. You also have Darren McFadden in the mix. To me, I wouldn't draft either of those guys.
No, because you don't even know who the handcuff is, really. I mean, to me, I think Alfred Morris is the better back, but Ezekiel Elliott is going to, be on the field most of the time. Although I think they did sign a 3rd down back, did they not? Like Ronnie Hillman or something?
You know what? I believe they did sign Ronnie Hillman.
Is that true? Okay. Just wondered if I have my facts straight. But Ezekiel Elliott, 15 touchdowns rushing, 1 touchdown receiving, but he did have 367 yards. So he had 32 catches. So
yeah, nothing
over 10 yards.
Nothing to shake a stick at. Definitely, if he's there for you, the 3rd or 4th pick, I think you got to take him.
Yeah, if someone takes Antonio Brown over Ezekiel Elliott, I'm kind of happy because I have that running back spot locked up, and I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
That's always a good thing. The suspension doesn't bother me too much because I think whether he's out, Le'Veon Bell was out. Two games last year or 4 games.
I think it was
2.
I think it was 3, and it got reduced to 2 or something like that.
2 games, and he still had a great year. So,
yeah.
I mean, even if Ezekiel Elliott is out 1 or 2 games, I think he's still going to finish near the top in most of these categories, except for receptions and receiving yards. But rushing touchdowns and rushing yards,
I'm on board with him 100%. When it comes to wide receiver, obviously Dez Bryant is still one of the best wide receivers in the league.
Yeah, I really like Dez. I know he's had some injury problems last year. This year he appears to be fully recovered. A goal line, in the red zone, there aren't many wide receivers better than Dez Bryant. So I mean, don't be worried if you have him as your number 1 receiver. I think he's fine for a number 1 receiver. You can spread it out with a few other receivers.
Yeah, and they have a couple other weapons there, too. Terrence Williams in Dallas. Cole Beasley, a good guy out of the slot. And then they drafted this year Ryan Switzer out of North Carolina. I think he's somewhere in the mix there, so we'll see what kind of camp he has.
Yeah, Terrence Williams, lots of promise, never does anything.
Right.
Cole Beasley, 75 catches, so he's the other guy you want to own. Ryan Switzer is probably, the next Cole Beasley. He's kind of like that Wes Welker receiver, but 75 catches for Cole Beasley, nothing to sneeze at.
No, not at all. Cole Beasley was a very dependent guy last year. And then when it comes to the tight end position, Jason Witten, the solid old veteran, had a bit of a dip in production last year.
Yeah, he still finished sixth in tight ends with 69 receptions. So, quietly getting it done still after all these years. He had 673 receiving yards. Didn't find the end zone as much as you'd like. I'm trying to find, he had 3 touchdowns. But 69 catches, that's 4 or 5 catches a game. So, decent floor.
Yeah, he's always been a dependable guy. I think if he's there in the mid rounds, I have no problem grabbing him.
95 targets, which was the same amount as Jimmy Graham, who a lot of people feel is a really good tight end. 95 targets is nothing to sneeze at. It was good for 7th overall.
Yeah, 100%. Dallas again is going to be a great team this year. Their bye's in week 6. They drafted a great defensive end out of Michigan named Taco Charlton. So I'm expecting him to have a great season as well.
Yeah, their defense is on the rise. It won't be a bad pick if you do end up taking Dallas. They have a pretty good schedule, I think. I picked them to win this division again this year. They should have an easier time than last year. I know the Giants will probably give them a decent run. It's a tough division overall, but I don't see Philadelphia or Washington making a run at Dallas.
I would agree. I'd say it's definitely between New York and Dallas, and I think that's a good segue to move into talking about the Giants. Ben McAdoo's in it for his 2nd season as the head coach. Mike Sullivan returns as the offensive coordinator. And we're really liking Paul Perkins.
Yeah, he's finally going to be they're finally going to have a lead back because they've had a running back by committee, which is always a headache for fantasy players. Once you hear running back by committee, you usually run. But last year was Rashad Jennings, who
still doesn't have a home.
No, he's still out there, and he was their lead back, and he's still out there. But Paul Perkins, he has tools to be a lead back. Still, he's unproven, and the New York Giants offensive line is average at best.
He had 112 attempts and 456 yards. It's around 4 yards a carry. So with that line they had last year, that's pretty impressive given his small amount of work.
Yeah, and somebody's got to carry the ball there. They do have Shane Vereen, who's going to, hog those 3rd down receptions and 3rd down carries.
Yeah, that's what he does out of the backfield. And then you still got guys like Orleans Darkwa that'll be, sneaking in the game here and there.
The guy you want to own, though, on that team is Odell Beckham Jr., who, is on a quest to become the highest paid player in the league.
Yeah, he's spectacular every time he steps out there. And, he's for me, he's top 3 wide receiver.
Yep.
Some people put him at number 1. I don't. I put Antonio at number 1. But I still think Odell is a guy that you want on your team because he's going to be targeted over and over and over, and he's going to make the catches.
Right. Well, let's take a look at that for a second here now. Odell Beckham Jr., second in the league in targets with 169.
Wow.
Receptions, he was 3rd with 101, right behind Antonio Brown. He was 3rd in receiving yards. Antonio Brown was 5th. Odell Beckham had 1,367 yards. And Odell Beckham Jr. had 10 touchdowns. Antonio Brown's 12. So there isn't a ton of difference, between either one's good now. Odell Beckham Jr. across from him, he's got Brandon Marshall.
So yeah, a guy that
will take some
change of scenery is going to do a lot of good for him.
Yeah, and Odell's going to draw double coverage a lot, so Brandon Marshall, he's not the fastest wide receiver, and he just makes most of his catches by bodying out his cornerback or defender. So he should benefit, from being opposite Odell Beckham Jr.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for me,
what do you think?
For me, Brandon Marshall's, an easy number 2 wide receiver with the potential to break into that top 15 area because of his targets and because of his ability to go up and get the ball.
Right. Yeah. He did have a lot of targets. Had an issue with some drops at 128 targets, only 59 catches. He had a little bit of an injury problem. He also had Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing in the ball, who also I think is looking for a home.
Yeah, and Eli is an upgrade for sure.
Yeah. What do you think of Eli Manning's year this year?
Eli's always going to be Eli. He's going to make some crazy throws. But he's going to make some great throws. So for me, if you're looking for a tier 2 starting quarterback, Eli for me is right in the middle of that tier, and he will be serviceable for you as a starting quarterback. He'll have some weeks where he goes off, and some weeks where you're puzzled.
Yeah, well, this year he's got weapons. He did have 4,000 yards last year, which very quietly had 4,000 yards last year. So he does have a quarterback one potential with his weapons, but like you said, I think he's more of a backup.
Yeah, and he's a guy that if you get lucky and you have 2 good guys and he starts having a great year, he's a guy you can flip in a trade.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone goes down and you've got Eli on your bench, you might be able to turn him into an extra running back or wide receiver.
Oh, definitely. And I know you and I have been talking a lot about their rookie tight end that they drafted out of Mississippi, Evan Engram.
Right. Yeah, I like this kid coming out, and that's just what they need. They haven't had a good athletic receiving tight end. Yeah, they've had kind of a cast of characters. Guys that you really just can't.
Like Larry Donnell?
Larry Donnell, maybe. There's been nobody to, work the middles, maybe stretch the field against linebackers. This year, Evan Engram could be, a sleeper pick, for a second tight end, maybe looking to break out kind of like Hunter Henry did in San Diego last year.
Right. And Evan Engram, too, is a guy that I think is really going to benefit from all the great wide receivers on the field. He's going to have a lot of wide open space.
Yeah, definitely. Great point. Now, there is a third wide receiver on the Giants. Do we know if he's fully healthy?
Yeah, so Sterling Shepard got hurt the other day. They at first were worried that it was an Achilles or something broken in his ankle, but it looks, as of right now, that he dodged serious injury and only has an ankle sprain.
Okay.
But we will keep an eye on that.
Had 65 catches last year, so it's nothing to sneeze at for what he was. Was he a second or third wide receiver last year? I can't remember. I know Odell was number 1. I think he was a second wide receiver. He played opposite of Odell. Maybe with Sterling Shepard working in the slot, he'll have a little bit more success.
Yeah, because he's going to be a big part of their offense. So he's a guy that I would target too, as long as he escaped injury here. I think he can be a guy that you can take, mid rounds of the draft, like maybe 5th or 6th round if he's still there. He's got some upside.
Right, and then of course the New York Giants defense was pretty tough last year.
Very tough.
They have a good pass rush. Jason Pierre-Paul and Olivier Vernon. It's a decent defense. It's probably a top 10 or 12 defense.
Yeah, I definitely put them in the top 10. I mean, they added a real big man defensive tackle, Delvin Tomlinson out of Alabama. Kid's 310 pounds. I mean, he's a big guy and is going to be a force to be reckoned with on that D-line.
Right, and kicking the ball, like I said, I don't know who. I don't care who my kicker is. Just as long as I have somebody in the slot.
Yeah, it's looking like their kicker is going to be Eldrick Rosas.
Okay, well, I guess I don't feel too bad about not knowing who he is.
There's a lot of kickers that moved around this year, so
yeah. My kicker is usually my last draft pick, 15th round or 16th.
Yeah, same for me.
Yeah.
The Giants have their bye in Week 8, and as we had mentioned a few minutes ago, we still think it's going to be between the Cowboys and the Giants for the division win here.
Yep, I agree.
A team that was much improved last year, but I expect to regress a little bit this year would be the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I'm on board with that too.
Their big off-season acquisition actually came from here in Chicago. They picked up Alshon Jeffrey at wide receiver.
Yeah, and I think if he's healthy, he should have a pretty good year. I'm not sure how Carson Wentz will take to Alshon's style, which is, basically winning a jump ball. That's how, Alshon's a lot like Brandon Marshall.
Right.
But Alshon is capable of some big games, and they just really don't have that many good receivers on Philadelphia. Jordan Matthews, I think, is kind of overrated, though he does his best work in the slot.
Agreed.
The other guy across from Alshon Jeffrey will be Torrey Smith, I think.
Correct. Yeah, they picked up Torrey Smith.
Right.
They still have Nelson Aguilar, who hasn't done anything.
Right. Now, Jordan Matthews, we always expect big things from him. Had some injury problems last year. Still finished with 800 yards and 73 catches. Gets a lot of targets. Had a problem with drops, 117 targets. So that probably changes with Alshon there, though.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I think Jordan Matthews' stock is going to take a bit of a hit. I still expect him to have a quality year. I just think his targets are going to go way down.
Yeah, Jordan Matthews probably a fifth wide receiver for me.
Yeah, I think you got to wait and see kind of how their chemistry develops with Jeffrey on the field. We'll keep watching some of these preseason games and try to get a better idea. But Matthews has talent. It's just a matter of if he's going to get the targets.
Right. What do you expect out of Torrey Smith?
To be honest with you, I'm not expecting too much out of him. I mean, he's always in his career really just been a deep threat. So I expect him to be looking for the deep ball. So he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be hit or miss. Week 1 he may go off and against the Redskins and have like 45 fantasy points, and everyone will pick him up. And then the rest of the season he'll just kind of be, pedestrian and getting about 7 to 10 points a game.
Yeah, I don't. He didn't really finish anywhere in any of the top categories, top 50 categories. I think he was completely shut out of it. Top 50 categories, but the guy I kind of like, that really is kind of a forgotten man is Zach Ertz.
Yeah, Zach Ertz has quietly snuck in and to have a pretty solid year last year.
Yeah, 106 targets, which is good for fifth. Had 78 catches, which was also good for fifth. Had 816 receiving yards, which was fifth. And he had 4 touchdowns. So he's a top 5 tight end. If you miss out on, some of those top guys like Kelsey, Gronkowski, and Greg Olsen and Delaney Walker, Zach Ertz is, not a bad option.
I agree. He's a guy that he has a great rapport with Carson Wentz, and I would imagine for that to continue to grow this season.
What about running back?
Well, they have an interesting situation in Philadelphia.
They do.
I mean, who do you consider to be the starter right now? Is it Wendell Smallwood?
If I'm the coach of Philadelphia, I'm running LeGarrette Blount first and second down as much as possible. But I couldn't tell you. I know that Darren Sproles will be your third down back, and Darren Sproles had a lot of receptions. Yeah. He finished 9th with 52 catches. He's a decent pickup in PPR. Ninth overall in receptions. He 2 more catches than LaShawn McCoy, but you don't really think about Darren Sproles, although 8.8 yards per touch, which is good for 6th overall. Mm-hmm. He also returns punts, I think. So he, as a 4th or 5th running back, filling in on a week when your running back or both running backs are on a bye.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
Does Sproles get drafted?
For me, you can't draft him because he had so many bust weeks last year. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's a guy you can draft. I do think that Wendell Smallwood is a guy that you could draft late. He's really having a great camp, and it's mm-hmm. the Eagles are talking about how physical of a running style he has. Last year in his first year in the league, he had 77 attempts for 312 yards, mm-hmm. averaged about 4 yards a carry.
Last year their starter was Ryan Matthews, I think. Is he no longer on the Eagles?
I don't believe he is. I don't even know where Ryan Matthews is at this time.
No, he's with Rashad Jennings looking for a home.
Yeah, well, Rashad Jennings won Dancing with the Stars, so I think he's doing all right.
Yeah, I think LeGarrette Blount, to me, is the only guy draftable running back on that team. But, yeah, Wendell Smallwood I'll have to keep an eye on.
After looking it up just now, it looks like Ryan Matthews is still on the Eagles,
Okay.
but he is expected to be cut because of the salary cap. So we will keep an eye on that.
Victim.
Yeah, I would imagine
possible landing spot might be Baltimore.
Yeah,
who has kind of a shortage of running backs with Kenneth Dixon's suspension, and Ryan Matthews might find a home over there.
Yeah, very well could be.
Had a decent start to the season with Philadelphia, if I remember.
Yeah, and then he battled injuries for the rest of the year.
And my money's on LeGarrette Blount over there. I just think the showing he had last year in New England, he was definitely going to be your goal line back.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for me, Blunt and Smallwood are the draftable guys. And then at kicker, they still have Caleb Sturgis.
Yeah.
Late round guy, solid kicker. I don't see any problem with you taking him with your last pick.
Finished fourth with 135 total points. Finished fourth with 35 field goals made. And, he's definitely not a bad pickup. So he's the number 4 kicker.
Yeah, agreed. And the Eagles' bye week is in week 10, and their defense they overperformed last year, I think.
Underrated. Good special teams as well.
Yes, and they built upon that. This year in the offseason, they drafted Derek Barnett, defensive end out of Tennessee. Really, really solid kid.
Yeah, it's adding to their pass rush. So, again, Philadelphia also not a bad pick for defenses.
Yeah, I think they're a defense that have potential to get you a lot of points some weeks and, put some stinkers up the other. But the risk, I think, outweighs the reward, or the reward outweighs the risk.
Yeah.
And we have one team left to talk about in the NFC East. I got the Washington Redskins under Jay Gruden in his 4th season. And then they have a new offensive coordinator in Matt Cavanaugh.
Yeah, to me, this is the most interesting team in this division, is the Redskins, from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot of weapons and potential to score you a lot of fantasy points. I mean, you have Kirk Cousins, who's playing in essentially a contract year. Needs to prove to the world that you should sign him.
Yeah, he did finish near the top in a lot of statistical categories. He was 3rd in the league with passing yards at 4,917 yards, 307 yards per game, average 8.1 yards per attempt, and he's definitely a number 1 quarterback.
Oh, absolutely. He's got the potential to be a top 5.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got some new weapons. I love the pickup of Terrell Pryor.
Yeah, I mean, he had a great year last year with the Browns, and people were blown away by what they saw.
He's going to be overdrafted, I'm sure, but 77 catches last year. He had let's see, how many touchdowns did he have? I memean, he's definitely going to be the number 1 receiver over there. He's big, he's fast. He still did a lot of damage in Cleveland with nobody good throwing him the ball. I imagine he's gonna be great in the red zone.
Yeah, he's got a lot of guys around him that can help make him better too. I mean, you have Jamison Crowder, who had very quietly a very good year last year as the number 2 receiver for the Redskins.
Yeah, Crowder with 8 touchdowns. Terrell Pryor had 1,000 yards receiving with Cleveland. So I'd say it's a pretty good bet. He's going to go over 1,000 with Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball.
Yeah.
He's a guy that lines up in the backfield too. He could play some quarterback as well. He was a quarterback in college. So, they have a bunch of ways they can use him. If Terrell Pryor's your number 2 wideout, I'd say you're looking pretty good.
Yeah, you're definitely looking good. And he's a guy, too, that he's on a 1-year deal. And, again, he's another guy that needs to prove that he can do it again for another year. So he's a guy that I'm targeting in a lot of my leagues because he's going to have that chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, I didn't know he was on a 1-year deal. So, yeah, that's more incentive. And then the third wide receiver is a kid that a lot of people are high on. His name is Josh Doxson. Lost a year last year due to injury. Yeah. But could be a good red zone target as well. We'll have to see. Maybe put Crowder in the slot most of the time at Doxson and Pryor when they run three wide receiver sets.
Yeah, could be a kid to watch. And they also picked up the good old veteran Brian Quick, who could quietly be a nice target for Cousins as well.
Yeah, and then you have the question mark at tight end, the guy with a ton of promise and just can't stay healthy.
Yeah, Jordan Reed, if he was healthy for every game of the season, would easily be the number 1 tight end in football, but that's not the case.
89 targets, 66 receptions, 6 touchdowns, 686 yards. He's the Gronkowski of the Redskins, and if you draft him, you definitely are playing with injury fire.
Oh, absolutely. It's a roll of the dice, but it could pay off for you too if he can manage to stay healthy. Because, man, every year I've had him, when he's healthy, he's fantastic. He's got Vernon Davis backing him up.
Yeah.
If Reed goes down, I don't expect Davis to have a whole lot of catches, but he could be a sleeper fill-in if Reed goes down. But I wouldn't draft Vernon Davis or Niles Paul.
And he finished with 44 receptions, Vernon Davis.
Well, you figure Reed was hurt for probably 4 or 5 games last season.
Right. What about at running back? It's usually this is why I think the Redskins are one of the more interesting teams is that the running back situation, is the unsettled part of the team. You're either going to have good wide receivers. The tight end play will be solid. The running back again is one of those running backs by committee.
Yeah, you don't have a clear starter. I mean, they have 4 guys. You got Rob Kelly, Chris Thompson, Samaje Perine, and Matt Jones. Jones has been on the scene for the last couple years, had some high up and downs, and he seems to have fallen to the bottom of that depth chart.
Yeah, he's in the doghouse. Rob Kelly was the leading rusher last year with 704 yards. It's kind of a mess. Chris Thompson gets most of the catches, finished with 49, which is decent. It was 12th in the league for running backs. Rushing touchdowns, it was Rob Kelly with 6. And then Samaje Perine is supposedly, a really good back. It's just, he's a rookie. He's got to learn pass protection. He's supposedly a decent receiver, so maybe they do. Maybe he does have a chance to become the lead back over there, and they desperately need a lead back. For me, I think Rob Kelly opens the season as a starter, but
most likely, I would agree with you.
I'm probably not going to draft any Washington running backs.
I think in a PPR league, you could draft Chris Thompson with the late round pick. I think he could be a guy that might get an expanded role, but he's the only one that I would consider picking up.
Yeah, for me, I think I would pick up Perine because I think he has a chance to overtake all the other running backs and maybe be the goal line back and be the number 1 lead back to get most of the carries. But I'd rather wait and see. Like we saw Jordan Howard go undrafted in our league last year.
Sure.
And look, he turned out pretty darn good.
I'd say so.
Other than that, let's see. The defense should be fairly decent.
Yeah, last year they held their own.
Mm-hmm. And the kicker is Dustin Hopkins, who finished 2nd in the league with 144 total points, just behind Matt Bryant. And he was second with 35 field goals made. It's also the same as Caleb Sturgis. So Dustin Hopkins, kind of a sneaky kicker pick, to start the season.
Yeah, he's always been a bit of an underrated guy. I mean, if you can get him with your last pick, there's a lot of guys you can do much worse with.
Yeah, what do you think about the Washington defense?
I think that last year was kind of a stepping stone. I mean, they had a lot of good games last year, and they kind of had their ups and downs. I expect them to take another step in the right direction this year. I think they're going to improve a little bit. They drafted, to me, one of the best players in the draft last year in Jonathan Allen at defensive end from Alabama.
Right.
As well as Ryan Anderson, who's going to be...
They still have Josh Norman back there.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a really improved defense. I mean, Jonathan Allen at defensive end and Ryan Anderson at outside linebacker from Alabama, I think these guys are going to fit right in, and I expect them to have a big impact.
Yeah, it's not a bad pick for defense, I think. You can do worse.
Yeah, and it's going to be a fun division to watch. Like we said earlier, we think it's going to be between the Cowboys and the Giants, but you never know if the Redskins might surprise.
Right. I know that Carolina's a popular defensive pick, but they also play in New Orleans division, and they play the Tampa Bay Bucks. And
yeah.
It's and the Falcons have a great offense. So I mean, you might want to look at Washington over a defense like say Carolina or Tampa Bay.
Well, yeah. I mean, granted they have a couple really good young rookies that may have some rookie mistakes, but I still expect them to take a really big next step and give Jay Gruden that defense that he really needs.
Again, I'm not sure in a 12-person league Washington's defense gets drafted, but or 12-team league. But you never know. I mean, that's, again, one you can maybe wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, defenses you can change all year long, so just keep an eye on the games and watch waivers and just be on top of it.
Yeah.
So,
I'm looking forward to this season. I just can't wait.
Oh, me either. It's right around the corner. Hall of Fame game is on tonight. I'm actually going to turn that on and check it out in a few minutes.
As will I.
Pretty much goes through our rundown of the NFC East. Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Football Goon podcast. Jen and I will continue our division run-throughs later this week. We'll get more content up for you. John, thanks again for joining me.
Anytime. Love talking football, fantasy football.
Yep, fantasy football on fantasyfootballgoon.com. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at FFBGoon. Check us out on Facebook and send us any questions or comments or rankings. Any questions you have, we will answer them for you. So reach out, don't hesitate, and John and I will look forward to hearing from you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you later this week.
I'll see you, Joe.
See you, John. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.